Okay, so you know how to make campaigns now. You've learned a lot so far. But even though the biggest problem for most people, maybe like 90% of advertisers, is to create campaigns that actually break even and start making some money and become an asset for the company, once you get good at creating Facebook ads and managing campaigns, the majority of your time is actually going to be spent scaling these campaigns. And this is what we do. Probably 90% of the time, we work on scaling campaigns rather than creating new campaigns. Of course, when we get new clients, we have to create the campaign from the very beginning. But then for the next God knows how many years, you're just going to be scaling and improving and optimizing these campaigns. So I think it's very, very important to talk about how do you actually scale campaigns. And so to do this, we'll take some examples. So let's go back to our good friend, the budget campaign example, right? So if you have skipped this video, again, you need to go back and watch it. And the first thing that you want to do when you have a successful campaign, so let's take a look at this line over here. You have a product, it costs, the price of it is $50, costs $50 for customers, costs you $15, you make a good margin of $35, and you create yourself a campaign. This campaign has $10 per day budget. This means $300 per month, and you make 30 conversions with a CPA of 10. Everything's fine. You make $1,500 in revenue. Your return on ad spend is 5. You made $750 from that. But that may not be enough for you to kind of break even with your business. Maybe your business expenses are much higher than $750. So that campaign is still not profitable. You need to scale it up. Step 1, increase the budget. And then what are the consequences of that? You increase the budget, and the first time you increase it, you won't see a big decrease in performance, right? So now, before you got 30 conversions, now you get 45, almost 50% more. But pay attention, your budget is now double. And this is something that always happens. Your CPA is going to increase when you increase your budget. Why does that happen? It happens for several reasons. First of all, it's your audience to budget ratio. So when you have a small budget, let's say the $10, and you have an audience of, let's say, 100,000 people, that's maybe too small, but let's call it 1 million. And then for this budget of $10, or you can reach maybe 1,000 people. Now, because you're going to be reaching these 1,000 people, Facebook already has a lot of information about their audience, about everyone on Facebook. And so if you, let's say, start advertising your t-shirts, they're gonna know like who are the people most likely to buy t-shirts and to complete the purchase events and all that. So for your $10, you're going to get the first people who are most likely to buy your product. And let's say for the $10, you can reach 1% of your audience per day. When you double that, you're going to reach 2%, but then that next 1% is not going to be as effective as the first one, right? So that's a very, very important factor to consider when actually managing Facebook ads. And so with the increase of the budget, you are always going to get the subsequent increase in CPA or cost per purchase, cost per result, whatever you want to call it. And so take a look at the implications of this. Now, even though these things did not change, you are making more money, right? You have more revenue, your return on ad spend has decreased, but your overall profit has increased. So the campaign is now better. And even though it's not better percentage-wise, it's not as efficient as before, it still made you more profit. And in the end of the day, the volume amount of the profit is what really matters. and then you repeat that process again, and then the CPA increases a little bit more, the return on ad spend decreases a little bit more, and so on. But if you keep going at that rate, you are going to encounter the following scenario where you are now getting, let's say, 70 conversions for your $40 per day budget. This means that your monthly budget is $1,200, but now your CPA has already increased significantly. And then, even though these did not change and you're making more revenue than before, right? Your revenue is higher, but your return on ad spend is lower, and then you actually make less profit than in this case, right? Take a look at this. Here you have a CPA of 13 and 65 conversions. Here you have 70 conversions, and you encountered this problem. So when that happens, then you actually have to move to the next kinds of solutions. First of all, before you start scaling like crazy, you should think about whether or not you have the capacity and the stock to handle that. So if you're an e-commerce store, can you actually sell 70 things per day, right? Can you actually do that? Maybe not, maybe yes, I don't know, or 70 things per month. Let's say you're selling something bigger. Can you actually handle that? That might be 700 or 7,000. If you can't, if your employees, your team can't handle that, that's a problem, capacity problem. If you don't have so many to sell and you need to wait for stock to arrive, you're gonna disappoint customers, and again, you end up in trouble. So first of all, you should be able to scale your capacity and stock before you scale your campaigns, because indigestion is a huge problem. We've already studied that in detail, so I won't go too much into the indigestion problems. But anyways, you see that even though you're spending more money now, you're making less profit, and you should be smart enough to realize that even though even though you make higher revenues, your actual profit is lower. And it's very important for you to be able to recognize that. And you can see that by the huge jump here in the return on ad spend. And so when this happens, you need to enter the so-called expand and contract cycles. So let's talk for a second about these guys. Just not mess up our document. So the expansion and contraction cycles happen all the time in pretty much all advertising platforms. They're a problem in Google Ads, on LinkedIn, in Facebook, everywhere. Now, they are much bigger problem in Google Ads because there's a lot more work to be done. But here, there's also a few things that you need to be able to do. First of all, you should not increase your budget too often. Because if you do change it, like you launch your campaign, it runs for 3 days, and then you start doubling the budget every day, what's going to happen is your campaign is going to suffer from performance issues because it's constantly in the learning phase. So if you are actually going to start scaling your campaign, you should maybe do that at least like once a week at the most regular, right? Not more than once a week, because your campaign needs time to go through the learning phase and adjust. Now, you also need to understand another fact, that's that when you increase your budget, so let's go back to the document over here and say that our audience size, we are gonna just put it over here somewhere, and say our audience size is 100,000 people, right? At $40 per day, you're going to run through that audience much faster. So what you need to do is refresh creatives and everything that I taught you about combating ad fatigue, right? So the higher your budget, the faster you get to ad fatigue because your audience size does not change. So a lot of the time, you need to also increase your audience size. But that has its own implications, right? If you just increase the audience size, like relax your targeting options, then what's going to happen is you're just going to end up targeting much more broadly, and these people are going to be less interested in your product on the one hand, and on the other hand, you're just going to start wasting a lot of money and your CPAs are going to go up. So you can't really do that on its own. And you need to think about the percentage ratio of budget to audience size, right? And you need to think of it in this way. How many days does it take with this budget to run through the audience twice? So how much time does it take for you to show your ads to the entire audience twice? At that point, you need to refresh creatives and you're going to start running into ad fatigue problems. And then there's also the other considerations of the capacity, and you need to start thinking about increasing the audience size. But also remember that there's the additional decrease in performance, because in the beginning, you're going to get the best out of these 100,000 people, the most likely to convert. That's what the Facebook algorithm is going to try and get you, provided that you have some pixel data. And even if not, Facebook still has information on their customers enough to figure out at least some better performance in the beginning. So there's that natural performance drop-off that you're going to encounter anyways, right? So you know how to scale the budget, but once you do scale the budget, there's consequences of that. And you need to consequently increase the audience size. So when you increase the audience size, naturally your CPM drops because of the audience size to CPM ratio, right? What happens is the bigger the audience, the lower the CPM in general. And you will need that help of the CPM decrease for several reasons. First of all, when you increase your audience size, that helps you with ad fatigue. When you increase your audience size, you get lower CPMs, which also helps with your performance problems. That means lower CPMs means also lower CPAs, like lower cost per result, cost per purchase. And so at that point, you also need to start thinking about maybe improving your products and thinking about the overall profit optimization. You can also optimize your ads, right? If you learn something, so let's say you're stuck at this point, but you're not just gonna go back right away, right? The first time you encounter this problem, you don't go back unless the problems are really huge. You wanna optimize. So let's say that you go and what we can do here is we are going to insert one row over here and say timeline. We're going to say week 1. Provide some weeks and make these guys black. And so week 5, for example, you are going to do exactly the same thing. But what you're going to do, you're going to keep the budget the same, but you will maybe learn from your ads. You already have data to analyze. Maybe you can try some better ads. And in this case, let's say you're going to get a bit of a better result. And so now you're already making better profit than before. But are you actually ready to scale again? No, I would do maybe one more round. You want to get more efficient and then scale. So these are the this is the equivalent of the expansion contraction cycles that we talked about in the Google Ads course, right? These are not as prominent here, not as difficult as in Google Ads, but they do matter. And so let's say now the third time you're going to get 80 conversions. So now your CPA is down to like the period of this, like a bit worse than that, but now you're making a lot more, right? And so now the time is to go ahead and scale maybe some more. So at this point, maybe you're tired and you need to kind of go with a bit of a higher budget, maybe even like go to a bigger jump than the just $10, right? You need to start kind of jumping it up, and maybe you could even go with something like 80. But take a look at that. If you don't increase your conversion counts, your profit is going to decrease significantly. And so you need to figure out how many conversions you need to have to become more profitable. Even if you get like 110 conversions, you can see that this situation is still more profitable. And you can see that this becomes harder the more you scale, right? So let's just say that in this case we doubled the budget, so we need to get to 160 to get to that same CPA, and that's a much higher volume of conversions. So if you are still with this audience, that gets very, very hard, not happening possibly. And so maybe you can get to 120 at this point. So let's see if we repeat that process, what's going to happen again. So let's say we go from 80 to 150. We jump it up, right? You can see now this campaign becomes directly unprofitable at 120 conversions. Let's say we go at 150, right? It's a significantly it's a significant increase. Even if we go like 180, it's still going to be less profitable than before. We need to go to 180 to match the results of that. But that's worse, right? If you compare these two scenarios, like the first one is better. You just spent less money advertising and you made the same amount of profit. So that kind of doesn't really help. Like your increase in advertising spend does not help you. You made more revenue, yes, but the same profit. So you end up spending more to get the same, which is not good. You can use this money to do something else. Like even you can just hire one guy for that additional nearly $2,000 and send them on the street to advertise by word of mouth, and you're still gonna get some better results than this profit, right? So doesn't make sense. And this kind of takes you to the next thing that you need to consider, which is your lifetime value, right? When things become tough, let's say you can't increase your audience size for now, but if you can repeat that process a few times more and kind of get some better results. That's why audience size is the first thing. And once you start running through the audience size, you start to refresh the ad creatives, and also like to combat ad fatigue, right? That's kind of what happens. And then the next step is you need to make some business improvements, right? You need to change your way of thinking, right? You're just selling a $50 product. If at this stage you manage to sell like a few of your customers, provide them with some upsell, and your price or lifetime value, now we don't look at the price of a single product anymore, but we look at the customer lifetime value, which is if you sell some of your customers something extra, your cost is going to probably increase to like 22 and your price is 24, but now your margin is $8 higher. And take a look at what happened here, right? We didn't increase the conversions. We still got the same 80 people, but now this became double, right? Just with a small increase in our margin multiplied by the number of conversions, by the bigger traffic, we get incredibly better results. So at this stage, it becomes a much smarter idea, instead of scaling your advertising campaigns, to start increasing the customer lifetime value, or maybe try and upsell something and so on. And you should always be focusing on this number over here. Like this is the the golden nugget, the goose that lays them golden eggs is here, right? This is what pays the bills. It's not the return on ad spend, it's not the revenue, it's not the margins. Like, all these things are important, but this is the king. And so now that you have done that optimization, what happens? You can just afford to spend more for marketing. Even though your CPA is 25 here and here it's 10, this campaign makes more money. And take a look at this now. We can push it. Let's push it. Go from 150 to 200. Your budget is now already $5,000. Your CPA is 33. But now you're not going to get 100 and 80 sales. Maybe you're going to get something like 210, right? Still worse in terms of return on ad spend, but still you're making, I'll make this bold so we can see it clearer. Maybe zoom it in a little bit. Zoom it in, I said. And take a look at this. Now, this situation is not better yet, but then again, now you can move on to the same cycle of thinking about better ads, better things. Like, you can go through this again, increase your audience size, just like that, and you can get an improvement in CPA. And once you get that improvement in CPA, and maybe get some fresh people coming in, that will become, you know, something like 230. And now you already beat your past profit results. And then take a look at what happened. We started week 1 with a $300 budget, and then it did good. Maybe it didn't take a week. Maybe you could stay at this stage for the first 3-4 weeks until you figure it out. But if you spend significant time figuring it out, that's going to work, right? And then in the next weeks, you start increasing, you face resistance, contraction, you fix everything that you can. And then you go and think about a significant increase in advertising spend. And you take your budget from $300 to $6,000, right? This is a 20-time increase in about 9 weeks, right? So that's 2 months, 2.5 months. You're already here. And then what you need to do then is, again, at this stage, maybe you need to stay put a little bit and think about, you know, what can you do? All this time you've been collecting customer feedback. You have customers, you have data to analyze, you have maybe a customer service team that you can ask how you can improve your experience. You have ad data, you have purchase data, you have a lot of information to analyze, and you can maybe think about, if that model is already very profitable, you can think about scaling it in terms of other countries, right? So just take that, it's already good, replicate it in another country. Let's move on to the neighbor countries and maybe to there, right? So that's kind of a dramatic increase in audience size, and it's a fresh audience as well. And all of these things kind of come together. You don't just scale the budget when your campaign is successful. You need to understand that you also need to scale the audiences, find more targeting options. You need to refresh your ad creatives, expand your market, and improve your business and kind of increase your customer lifetime value, like I taught you in the business fundamentals and marketing fundamentals courses. You need to be increasing that customer lifetime value all the time by having better retention, providing more value and so on, a broader range of products, and all that business development is going to come into place, because ads are not magical. The more you scale them, the worse they become. So you need to find and eke out from somewhere this performance that needs to come from here, right? If here we are still at this situation, this is bad. Let's see if even with the improvements it works. This is quite bad, and this is quite bad, right? Let's just go back and fix those to 15 and see, right? Now we're spending $6,000. Here we're spending $2, and we get like just $100 more. That's not gonna work, right? I'll just get this back. And what you can do then on week 10 is maybe create some other campaigns for other products, or again think about how can you maybe do that trick over here. So let's say you manage to double it. Take a look at what happens. This is what happens. So this is where this becomes your margins become much higher priority than scaling your ad campaigns. So you need to figure out which numbers do you need to optimize and improve to get better results. Sometimes it's not just the advertising, and that's why I often say that marketing strategy is a part of business strategy, and marketing is one at the business strategy level. Because if you can't do this and double your margins, then you're just gonna make 3 times more money than if you double your advertising campaigns, and face all the resistance and inefficiencies that come with that. So that's my take on scaling ad campaigns. We go through this process every single time with every single company. There's no escaping it, and you just need to think about it right so that you will make the right decisions when the time comes. And I wish you the greatest success, and really hope that you will be able to scale your campaigns through the sky and make a lot more money. But you won't be able to do that unless you start thinking in the right direction. And that's everything I have on scaling campaigns.